Welcome to my channel. What if the biggest reason you cannot speak English confidently is not your vocabulary, grammar, or accent, but the silent conversation inside your own mind? Imagine waking tomorrow and discovering that before you translate a sentence, your brain is already creating English. That small change can turn hesitation into confidence, and today you will discover how. The first turning point came when I realized I did not need perfect English. I needed to train my brain to use simple English before my mouth spoke. When I saw a cup, I thought, this is a cup. When sunlight entered, I thought, the sun is bright. When I felt tired, I thought, I am tired. Nothing sounded impressive, but my brain was building a direct connection between ideas and English instead of translation. The second turning point came when I made this practice part of daily life. While brushing my teeth, I thought, I am brushing my teeth. While drinking tea, I thought, the tea is hot. While walking outside, I described what I saw. English stopped feeling like a school subject and started becoming a companion. The third turning point arrived when I stopped chasing difficult vocabulary. I had believed advanced words made me intelligent, but they often made me silent. Instead of thinking, I am experiencing tremendous happiness, I thought, I am very happy. Simple English gave me speed, and speed gave me confidence. The fourth turning point was learning to ask questions. I asked myself, what is this? Where am I going? What am I doing? Then I answered in English. This created imaginary conversations and made learning feel like a game. The fifth turning point happened when I connected words with pictures. If I thought apple, I imagined an apple. If I thought car, I pictured a car moving down a road. Words stopped feeling like translations and started feeling real. The sixth turning point came from listening. Whenever I heard a useful sentence, I repeated it silently. Good morning. How are you? I was not memorizing isolated words. I was training my brain to recognize complete patterns. The seventh turning point was the moment I stopped fearing mistakes. My thoughts were private. Nobody could judge me. If a sentence sounded wrong, I tried again. My mind became a safe practice room where failure was allowed. Soon, something surprising happened. While walking through a market, I described everything in English without forcing myself. That shop is crowded. Those vegetables look fresh. I need some bread. I suddenly smiled. English was appearing before translation. That was the eighth turning point, proving repetition was creating a new mental path. The ninth turning point came when I stopped believing practice required hours. I created 5-minute English moments after waking, while walking, and before sleeping. The practice was small, but because I repeated it daily, it became powerful. The 10th turning point came when I turned my day into a story. I woke up. I opened the window. I made breakfast. I answered a message. Now I am going outside. My ordinary life became English practice. The 11th turning point came when I forgot a word and refused to return to translation. If I forgot pillow, I thought, it is soft, and I put my head on it. I learned that communication mattered more than perfection. The 12th turning point arrived before real conversations. I rehearsed meeting someone, ordering food, asking directions, and making a phone call inside my mind. When the real moment came, my brain recognized the situation. I was nervous, but I was prepared. The 13th turning point came after conversations. I reviewed them silently and asked, what did I say well? What could I improve next time? Instead of criticizing myself, I learned from myself. Every conversation became a lesson. The 14th turning point came when I realized confidence was not something I had to find, it was something I could build. Every sentence I thought, mistake I corrected, and conversation I attempted added another brick to my confidence. The 15th turning point changed my entire view of fluency. I understood that fluency is not created in one dramatic moment. It is created through thousands of tiny moments nobody sees. A sentence while brushing your teeth, a question while walking, a repeated phrase before sleep, or a quiet thought while waiting. Those moments seem small, but together they transform your brain. So, if you feel stuck, do not wait for perfect grammar. Start with one sentence. Look around and name something in English. Describe what you are doing, ask yourself a question, and answer it. Make mistakes in your private practice space, then try again. You are not wasting time. You are building a new mental habit. One day, without warning, you may notice something incredible. English is no longer something you translate. It is something you think right now. The next morning, something felt different. I woke up, looked at the window, and instead of searching for words in my first language, I immediately thought, it is a beautiful morning. It was only one sentence, but I understood its importance. My brain had started choosing English before I asked it to. I decided to protect that small victory by creating a simple rule. Whenever I had a thought that I could express in easy English, I would express it in English. I did not need to translate every thought, and I did not need to force myself to think complicated sentences. I only needed to notice opportunities. While making breakfast, I thought about the food, the smell, and the weather. While cleaning my room, I described what I was doing. While traveling, I silently described the places around me. Slowly, ordinary moments became training moments. Then another challenge appeared. Sometimes my mind became completely empty. I knew what I wanted to say, but no English sentence came. In the past, I would become frustrated and return to my first language. This time, I tried something different. I used the English words I already knew and built a bridge toward the missing idea. If I did not know a word, I described it. If I could not make a long sentence, I made 3 short ones. That decision created another breakthrough. I discovered that not knowing a word did not mean I had to stop communicating. I could keep moving. I could explain. I could simplify. I could find another path. This changed the way I looked at vocabulary. I stopped measuring my progress by the number of words I knew and started measuring it by what I could communicate with the words I had. Then I began practicing situations that made me nervous. I imagined walking into a store and asking for something. I imagined meeting a stranger. I imagined answering a question at work. I imagined introducing myself to a new group. Before each situation, I practiced a few simple sentences in my mind. Hello, nice to meet you. Could you help me? I would like this one, please. Let me explain. These sentences were not complicated, but they gave my brain something familiar to hold on to when nervousness appeared. One day, I had to speak English unexpectedly. My heart beat faster, and for a second, fear returned. But then a sentence appeared in my mind before panic could take control. I spoke. It was not perfect. My grammar was not flawless. My pronunciation was not exactly how I wanted it. Yet the other person understood me. I walked away with a strange feeling of victory. I had finally learned something more important than perfect English. I could communicate even while imperfect. That realization became another powerful shift. From then on, I stopped waiting to become confident before speaking. I understood that speaking was how confidence was created. Every attempt gave me evidence that I could survive mistakes. Every conversation made the next conversation less frightening. I also discovered the power of repeating useful sentences. When I heard a natural expression, I did not simply understand it and forget it. I repeated it silently later. If someone said, "That sounds great," I remembered it. If I heard, "What do you think?" I practiced saying it in my mind. If I heard, "I'm not sure," I used it in imaginary situations. Gradually, these expressions became familiar patterns. They were no longer sentences I had to construct word by word. They were ready to use. This made my thinking faster. Then I started listening more carefully. Instead of trying to understand every word in a video, I focused on short phrases. I listened to the rhythm, the pauses, and the way sentences connected. After hearing a phrase, I repeated it silently and imagined using it myself. Sometimes I repeated the same sentence several times while walking. It felt simple, almost too simple, but those repetitions were quietly strengthening my memory. Another important discovery came when I realized that English could be connected to emotions. When I felt excited, I thought, "I am excited." When I felt nervous, I said, "I am nervous," but I can do this. When something disappointed me, I thought, this is difficult, but I will keep going. English was no longer limited to lessons. It became part of my real emotional life. That made the language more meaningful. I began using English not only to describe objects, but to describe myself. I could talk about my goals, my worries, my plans, and my dreams. Then I created one final habit for each day. Before sleeping, I reviewed the day in English. I remembered where I went, what I learned, what made me happy, and what I wanted to improve. Some nights I could make long sentences. Other nights, I could only make simple ones. It did not matter. The habit mattered more than perfection. After several weeks, I noticed that some English thoughts were arriving automatically. I would see something and know the English word immediately. I would hear a question and understand it without translating every piece. I would prepare an answer while the other person was still speaking. The change was not dramatic from one day to another. It was almost invisible. But when I looked back, I could see the distance I had traveled. I finally understood the secret. The brain follows the path you repeatedly give it. If you constantly translate, translation becomes the path. If you repeatedly think, listen, imagine, and respond in English, English becomes the path. And once that path becomes familiar, speaking begins to feel less like a test and more like a natural action. That is when learning becomes transformation. The real transformation began when I stopped treating English as something I had to study and started treating it as something I could live. Every morning became another chance to train my mind. I did not need a classroom. I did not need perfect conditions. I simply needed to notice the English opportunities already surrounding me. While making tea, I described the process. While walking, I noticed buildings, people, vehicles, and sounds. While waiting, I created tiny conversations in my head. These moments looked ordinary from the outside, but inside my mind, something powerful was changing. I was building a habit that became stronger because I repeated it without giving up. Then came another challenge. I realized that thinking in English was easier when I already knew the situation. But what happened when something unexpected occurred? What happened when someone asked a question I had never practiced? For the first time, I deliberately trained my brain for surprise. I imagined random questions and gave myself different answers. Why are you learning English? What did you do yesterday? What are your plans tomorrow? What would you do if you had a free day? At first, my answers were short. Sometimes I paused for several seconds, but I refused to panic. I reminded myself that a pause was not failure. It was simply my brain searching for a path. With practice, those pauses became shorter. Then another turning point arrived when I learned to think beyond individual sentences. I began connecting ideas. Instead of thinking, it is raining, I added, so I will stay inside. Instead of saying, I am tired, I continued, because I worked all day. I was learning to connect thoughts naturally. This made my internal conversations longer and more realistic. I could explain reasons, describe experiences, and express opinions. My brain was no longer practicing isolated English. It was practicing communication. I also began using stories. Every day, I created a tiny story from something I had seen. A person missed a bus. A child dropped a toy. A shop opened late. A man helped an elderly woman cross the road. I imagined what happened before and after the moment. Sometimes I gave the characters simple conversations. This exercise was surprisingly powerful because stories forced me to use different kinds of English: actions, descriptions, questions, emotions, and reactions. Then I discovered something even more important. I did not have to wait until I knew every word to tell a story. I could use simple language and still communicate an interesting idea. That lesson removed another invisible wall from my confidence. I started believing that simple English could carry powerful thoughts. One evening, I tested this idea by explaining a personal goal entirely in simple English. I wanted to improve myself, become more confident, and help others learn. The words were not advanced, but the message was clear. I realized that communication was not a competition to impress people with vocabulary. It was a bridge between one mind and another. Once I understood that, I became less obsessed with sounding perfect. I became more interested in being understood. Another change happened when I began practicing responses instead of memorizing speeches. Memorized speeches can disappear when the conversation changes, but flexible thinking prepares you for anything. So I practiced different ways to answer the same question. If someone asked, "How was your day?" I could say, "It was good," or "It was busy, but I learned something," or "It was difficult, but I finished my work." Each answer gave my brain another path. I was becoming more flexible. Then I started challenging myself with time. I gave myself 30 seconds to describe an object, 1 minute to explain an idea, and 2 minutes to tell a simple story. The goal was not speed for its own sake. The goal was to keep my thoughts moving without constantly returning to my first language. Sometimes I made mistakes. Sometimes I repeated myself. Sometimes I ran out of ideas. But every attempt strengthened my ability to continue. Eventually, I noticed another remarkable change. English words began appearing during moments when I was not consciously studying. I would be walking, thinking about something completely unrelated, and suddenly an English phrase would enter my mind. At first, I was surprised. Then I smiled because I understood what it meant. My brain had started practicing without being commanded. This was proof that habits can become automatic when we give them enough repetition. Still, there were difficult days. Some mornings I felt lazy, some evenings I felt tired. Sometimes I wondered whether my practice was actually working. During those moments, I remembered how far I had already come. I compared my present thoughts with the hesitation I had experienced before. The difference was real. Maybe I was not fluent yet, but I was no longer standing at the same starting point. That realization gave me the strength to continue. I learned that progress is often invisible while it is happening. A seed underground does not look like a tree, but growth is already taking place. English learning can feel the same. You may think nothing is happening because you cannot see the change immediately. But every sentence you think, every phrase you repeat, every mistake you correct, and every conversation you attempt is creating something inside you. Then came the moment that changed my definition of fluency forever. I realized fluency was not the absence of mistakes. Fluency was the ability to keep moving despite mistakes. It was the ability to express an idea with the words available. It was the courage to continue when the perfect word was missing. Once I accepted that, speaking became lighter. I stopped asking, "Is my English perfect?" and started asking, "Can I express my message?" That question gave me freedom. And with that freedom came something I had been chasing for a long time: confidence. The confidence I had gained did not mean fear disappeared forever. It meant I finally knew what to do when fear appeared. I could breathe, slow down, use simple words, and keep going. That lesson became the final stage of my journey, turning private practice into a real habit that could survive busy days, mistakes, and difficult conversations. I created a simple routine. In the morning, I gave my mind a few English sentences. During the day, I described what I saw and did. Whenever I heard a useful phrase, I repeated it silently. At night, I reviewed my day in English. The routine was small enough to continue, and that made it powerful. Soon I noticed that my conversations were changing. I was not searching for every word. I was listening more carefully because my brain was preparing responses while the other person spoke. When I did not understand something, I could calmly say, "Could you say that again?" Instead of freezing, I had tools. Instead of escaping the conversation, I stayed inside it. That was another victory, because confidence is not knowing everything. Confidence is knowing how to continue when you do not know everything. I also learned to celebrate tiny victories. One day, I understood a sentence without translating it. Another day, I answered immediately. None of these moments looked extraordinary, but together they proved that my brain was changing. Whenever doubt returned, I remembered them. Progress became something I could see. Then I faced a difficult week. I became busy and stopped practicing as much as before. After several days, I felt guilty and thought I had lost my progress. But instead of giving up, I remembered the most important lesson. Missing a day does not erase the journey. I started again with one sentence. Today I will practice. That sentence was enough, and that simple decision changed everything for me again. I understood that consistency does not mean perfection. Consistency means returning after you fall away. From that point, I stopped comparing my English with other people. Someone might speak faster, someone might know more vocabulary, someone might have a different accent. None of that changed my journey. My only useful comparison was with the person I had been yesterday. Was I thinking a little faster? Was I speaking with less fear? Could I explain something more clearly? If the answer was yes, I was moving forward. I began sharing what I learned with others. When a learner told me, I know English, but I cannot speak, I understood how that felt. I told them to stop waiting for perfect sentences. Start with what you know. Describe your room. Talk about your breakfast. Ask yourself questions. Imagine conversations. Repeat useful phrases. Make mistakes privately and learn from them. Then take those thoughts into real conversations. She walked around her room naming objects in English. She thought it was too simple to matter, but after several weeks, she noticed that common English words were appearing faster. Later, she answered a question in English without translating first. She was shocked. I smiled because I knew that moment. It was the moment when practice becomes visible. That experience reminded me why this method matters. You are not turning your brain into a dictionary. You are teaching it to communicate. You are building a bridge between what you think and what you say. Every repetition strengthens that bridge. So if you are watching this and thinking, my English is too weak, remember that your current level is not your final level. You do not need thousands of words today. You need one sentence today. Tomorrow, you can add another, then another. Give yourself permission to sound simple while you become strong. And now, before this story ends, try something with me. Look around you. Choose one object. Think of its English name. Now describe it with a simple sentence. Ask yourself a question about it and answer. Do not translate. Do not judge yourself. Just continue. You have already begun training the most important speaking partner you will ever have, your own mind. The greatest lesson is simple. English fluency is not built only when you open a book or sit in a classroom. It is built in quiet moments when nobody is watching. It grows when you think in English while walking, cooking, waiting, resting, and preparing for tomorrow. Your brain becomes stronger through repetition, patience, and courage. Keep talking to yourself in English. Keep your sentences simple. Keep listening, repeating, imagining, and speaking, even when mistakes appear. One day, the English sentence you once had to search for will suddenly be waiting inside your mind. You will speak before fear can stop you, and think before translation can slow you. Then you will realize that the confident English speaker you wanted to become was being built quietly, sentence by sentence.